Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the Coming Down to Earth with Spirit podcast with me, David Hale. Like with Season 1, we will continue talking about all things spiritual in a real and down-to-earth way. So I hope you can join me on my podcast journey so you can learn from my own spiritual journey and experiences with spirit in order to help you on your own spiritual journey and development. So join me now as we get into this episode. Hello everybody and welcome to another listener questions episode. I hope you're all well and thanks again for tuning in. Now in this episode we're going to answer a question which I have been asked before, but I haven't really given a in-depth answer to it really publicly. So let's use this episode to do that. And the question comes from Rachel. And the question is, have you ever supported police work or had anything come through to you from spirit that you felt or knew was a potential crime? It's a great question, and I think my answers could be, we could divide it up into separate parts. So let's try and break it down to make it easier so I don't get lost in my own mind when I'm trying to answer the question and go off on loads of tangents. So firstly, let's just look at the question, have I ever supported police work? The answer is no, not officially. I've never been asked to, and I've never offered to do it either. But what I have done, I have worked on certain cases. And sometimes that's just been off my own bat because I might be drawn to a particular case and I want to get involved and have a look at what I feel went on, but I don't share those results publicly. So sometimes it just comes from a place of being nosy, basically. Sometimes I've done it as part of a group. So there have been some missing persons on murder cases that I've worked on with a group of us. So it was me and 3 other girls. And usually the cases come about because we're asked by friends of the family that were affected by whose family member has gone missing, or we've been asked by members of the community in which that missing person lived in. So that's how some other ones have come about. So I don't look at every single case that's out there and think, I'll dig and delve into that one. It's more if if I have been approached or if the group was approached to look at certain cases to see what we can find out, because there haven't been any answers or what have you. So that's what I have done. I won't necessarily go into the details of the cases that I have looked at, but just know that there is something that I have done. But I feel that, I would like to do more of that work in the future, but I feel that's probably an area of development for me, because it's one thing doing a reading for somebody, like I do, being a medium, and it's another thing looking into crimes, missing persons cases, murder cases. They're very different. And they're different in the fact that when I'm sat with a client and I'm connecting with their spirit family, they can validate what I'm saying as we go through the reading. So I know that if I'm saying things that are correct and the client's saying yes, I know that, without a shadow of a doubt, that I have their loved one. And you build that connection, more evidence comes in, and that person leaves the reading knowing that I've connected with their loved one in spirit and I've given them evidence of that. But when it comes to working on, say, missing persons cases or whatever, you don't have the validation. You're having to trust what you're feeling, what you're picking up on, and hope that your logical brain, your imagination is not creating those things in your mind, which I still find difficult to do with those kind of cases. And sometimes if it is a missing persons case, you don't know if they are actually just missing and still alive or whether they have passed to spirit. And that can sometimes be a blocker for me, because obviously I don't want to put anyone in the spirit world who's not in the spirit world. They could well be living. And unless you know that, and sometimes the families don't know that, for me, it can just be very hard, because you don't want the person to be deceased. You want them to be found alive. And because of that want, you almost don't want to feel any negative information like they have deceased. Does that make sense? And it just reminds me of a case actually that myself and the girls were looking at a couple of years ago, and it was to do with it was in America. It was to do with a guy who was a CEO of an airline, and he had gone missing, and no one knew what happened to him. We worked on that case for a number of weeks, and not a single one of us picked up the fact that he had passed. We still felt that he was alive somewhere. None of us felt his spirit come through to any of us. And sadly, a few weeks later, he was found deceased. And we all questioned ourselves, and we all thought, why did none of us who are mediums, why did none of us pick up the fact that he'd gone? But none of us felt his spirit. The feeling that we had was that he was still alive, but he wasn't. But we can't really explain why that happened. But what it does, if you don't know that information to start with, it can distort certain aspects of what you're looking at, and it can distort the answers that you're trying to pick up psychically. But with that case, like many other cases I've worked on, I do look back and see what I got right and what I got wrong. And when I've looked back at those cases that I worked on, there's a lot of stuff that I got right, and equally there's a lot of stuff that I got wrong as well. And I do look at those things that I got wrong, and I do question myself and think, how did I get that so wrong? How did I pick up that information so incorrectly? And when I think about it, my feeling is, it's that as psychic or mediums or whatever, we are human. We're not meant to know everything, and we shouldn't know everything. But also, we're human. We are not superhuman. We don't have any special powers. We're not special. We're human, just like everybody else, except we do have a heightened sense of, sensitivity or intuition or whatever. But also, we still have that logical part of our brain, which we use on a daily basis. And sometimes what can happen is that logical part of the brain can interfere with what we're trying to receive or perceive psychically or intuitively, because that's what the brain naturally does. As psychic and mediums, it really is our job to separate those things and to be able to separate what's our imagination and what's coming through from spirit or what we're picking up psychically. But sometimes it is very difficult, and there's quite a thin line sometimes between what we're imagining and what we are genuinely receiving from spirit or, again, what we're picking up psychically. And I feel like in cases like, missing persons cases or murder cases, you really want to help, not necessarily solve the case, because that's not our job, but to help give some kind of insight or some new information into helping the resolution of the case. And because of that, I feel like our logical brain does kick into gear. And like anyone, we imagine things. The brain can create images and scenarios in the mind, just like you're making up a story. That can happen. And so I also think that's why some psychics do get a bad rap, because there are some psychics out there who put things out on the internet, like on YouTube or Facebook, and say, I know where this person's buried, I know where this person's gone missing, I know where this, and they get it completely wrong. And it's not because they're necessarily a bad psychic. Obviously, there are some hacks out there, let's be honest. But for others, it's not because they're a bad psychic. It's sometimes I feel like the logical brain has taken over, or the bias of the person has taken over, and it distorts the information that is being picked up psychically. And then it also comes down to trust, because again, we don't have someone sat in front of us validating what we're saying. We're just receiving or perceiving information and trusting what's coming through. And sometimes we talk ourselves out of certain information, and we go, no, they can't possibly have died like that, or they can't possibly be buried there or put there, when actually it probably is the case. But we've talked ourselves out of that because it might be random or it just doesn't fit the case as you know it. So your logical brain then overtakes that and then makes something else up, and makes up another scenario of how they pass, rather than us just trusting what comes through. So actually, I feel like working with police or working on those kind of investigations are quite a difficult thing to do, because there is no backstory. And a lot of the time when you are given a case to look at, you don't have all the information about the case in the first place. Sometimes you are going completely blind with no information at all. You might be told that this person's gone missing, can you help find them? But that is it. You're not giving any other information. So you then really have to trust anything else that comes in without having the constant validation from people that are involved in the case that can validate those things. So this kind of work it's something I would like to do more of, but I think my spiritual journey is taking me on another path at the moment. But this is an area which I feel I've got to do a lot of development on, to be able to do it effectively and correctly, really. So that's the kind of the first part of answering this question. Now, the second thing I would say is, people do ask, why are police so against working with psychics? And look, as I said a minute ago, look, there are some hacks out there. There are some psychics who will tell you this person's buried there. I know exactly where they are, and they're not there at all. And again, that's not because they're necessarily a bad psychic, but it could just be what I've said. Imagination or the logical brain has taken over and has created this scenario rather than it be spirit information or intuitive information. And obviously that gives us a bad rap in the first place, right? And what also gives us a bad rap is whenever a crime happens, you get these psychics which jump straight onto YouTube and have to get themselves out there and have to tell you what they think. No, you don't. All of the work that I have done with these cases, I've kept my mouth shut, because it's not any official work. I don't want to upset or distress family members or friends of those people that are missing or that were in fact murdered. I keep my gob shut, because it's not about the attention. It's not about, oh, look at me, look what I got right, look what I got wrong. So that also gives us a bad name, because it looks like we're trying to show ourselves as being better than other people, or I know this, so I'm better than that person. That person didn't pick that up, but I did. So I don't get involved in any of that. I don't want to be involved in any of that. I'd rather keep it, behind the scenes. And if people ask me, I might tell them, but I'm not going to go and offer information about things that I've picked up, especially if I've not been asked to do it in the first place. But coming back to why, slightly off tangent there, but let's come back to why police are so against it. Again, I've said there are some hacks out there, obviously, and they're always wary about it. Some people just don't believe in the work we do, full stop, anyway, whether you're a police person or not. But then I also think, look, I agree with the fact that police need facts. They need tangible evidence that they can feel, they can see, they can calculate, etc., etc. So I absolutely agree that it is up to the police to solve a crime. It's never up to a psychic or a medium to solve a crime. That is not our job. So when I see psychics again saying, I can solve this, or I solved it, no you didn't, and no you can't. It's not up to you to solve a case. That's about your ego. This is not about the interests of these people that have gone missing. From my perspective, as a psychic, or a medium, we could just be used as a tool to find out more information. We are not there to solve a crime. So even when cynics or skeptics say, oh, a psychic never solved anything, well, no, we're not supposed to. It's not my job to do a police person's work. It's up to the police to do. That's what they're paid for. I am not paid to do that. So it's not up to me to solve a crime, right? That's up to the police. So again, I get it. The right thing to do is for the police to have that evidence, that thing that they can see, touch, feel. A bit like scientists. They don't believe in it unless they can see it, calculate it, weigh it, poke it, whatever you want to say. So I get it. But I would like them just to be maybe a little bit more open-minded to what a psychic or a medium has to say. But I also get why they're cautious about doing that, from what I've already mentioned. And from what I have been told and what I feel is that a lot of cases are helped along by psychics, but it does go under the radar, because if you put out there in the newspapers that a psychic or a medium helped solve this case, how do you think that would make the police look? It'd make them look like they can't do the job properly. It'd make them look incompetent. A policeman can't do it, or a policewoman can't do it, but a psychic can do it. They can solve it. So I do feel that psychics are used in some cases, but you don't hear about it. It goes very much underground, if you like. And actually, some psychics prefer that, because it's not about us. It's not about what we can do. It's about, at the end of the day, helping to solve a particular case. And sometimes psychics are not meant to know everything. That is not, if we're meant to know everything, we might as well be a vegetable, because our brains would be so full of other people's stuff, other people's lives. That just doesn't make sense for that to happen. And it just doesn't work like that. And, and sometimes we're not meant to know things. And this leads me on to the third point, really, is exactly that. A psychic doesn't know everything. We're not meant to know everything about everybody. It's just impossible. You wouldn't say that to a person who wasn't psychic. And it brings me back to a reading that I was doing a long time ago. I was only like 2 years into my development. And I was doing a reading for somebody who I used to work with. And I picked up that their cousin had been, from what they understand, that their cousin had been murdered. But there were still issues about, was he murdered or take his own life? But the family felt that he was murdered. And as I was doing the reading, this lady's family, connected to the person who was no longer here, came on because they wanted to hear what I had to say about it. And I'd seen in my head one of the perpetrators, what I felt was one of the perpetrators. I could see what it looks like. And all they kept saying is, we want their name. We want their name. You need to tell me their name. We need the names of these people. And I wasn't being given the names of the perpetrators from spirit. And I had to say very clearly to them, look, your relative here, who has sadly passed on, he's not given me, I do feel he was murdered, but he's not given me the names of those people. And the reason was, in that particular case, when I did look back at it afterwards, number one, it's not my place to give them the names of these people, because I have no factual evidence about a case. I'm just picking up from spirit. I trust spirit, what they're giving me, but it's not my place to give the name of the person who murdered him or the people that murdered him. But I wasn't being given those names. Spirit did not give me those names, and I'm not about to pull one out of my arse and give them to you to make you feel better. It's not up to me to do that. But also, you can understand that someone being murdered would make certain family members really angry that their loved one had been taken that way. And the father, and I picked this up as well from the spirit person, that their father was so angry that this has happened, which is understandable. Get it, right? You are going to be angry if your child was taken out of this lifetime by another person. You are going to be angry. And a reason I felt at the time that spirit was not giving me a name of the person who murdered them was because their dad was so angry that if they had found out the name of that murderer, that dad would go round to that murderer's house and would kill him. And what good is that going to do? That's not going to bring your son back. And it's also going to rip the family apart even more by the dad being banged up for murdering the murderer. So there are different reasons as to why we're not meant to know things. Sometimes it's just not our place to know things. It's a bit like if someone asks me, I feel a lump in my breast. Have I got cancer? Well, that's not up to me to tell you, because I'm not your doctor. I have not scanned you. I have not done any blood tests on you. I am not, it's not my place to tell you as to whether you have cancer or not. Do you know what I mean? So it's the same thing. And I feel like people just need to understand that, because there is some ignorance out there where people will say, well, if you're so psychic, you'd know this, this and this. No. I don't need to know this, this and this. It's not my business. I am told what I need to be told. I pick up on what I need to pick up on. So with these cases, like police work, I feel like we just have to tread very carefully with it, really. And if we're meant to be involved in it, we're meant to be involved in it. You know, if a police came to me and said, would you help me work on this case? You know, I might, although I'd love to do it, I might even say no, because I don't know, you know, based on my previous cases that I've worked on, if I'm good enough at this point in my life to do that. Because I know I do have a logical brain. I have got an imagination. I'm quite a creative person. So my mind does go 10 to the dozen quite often. So I don't know, in fact, if I would be any good at further police cases or missing person case, or whatever you want to call them. So I think that's all I've got to say on that without me going off on any more tangents. So I hope you found it interesting, Rachel, and anyone else who wanted to know the answer to that question as well. But keep the questions coming in, look after yourselves, and I'll speak to you all soon. Well, there you have it. That's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed what you heard and you found it interesting. There are plenty more episodes to come, so stay tuned, and I'll speak to you all soon.